So for movement, we are going to talk about like what's our minimum, like when we're not feeling motivated, when we don't want to do anything, um, all those feels, like what's our minimum? Do we just stretch for 5 minutes, maybe get on the bike for 5 minutes, maybe, take a small walk? I know that like sometimes I'll trick myself with a walk. I'll be like, I'm just going to walk. Like I'm no pressure, whatever. And then I'll get a little bit in and then I'll be like, oh, actually I have a little bit more motivation. I'm going to go for a run. And so sometimes my minimum will trick me into doing more. And so I don't know if it's a thought process that we have that often. Like, okay, what is our minimum? Because a lot of times too, I'm just like, I don't feel like doing anything. And then nothing will happen when really I could have maybe tricked myself into like more happening. But I don't think of it like that. Like I always think about it like in terms of like my nutrition, like what's my minimum? Okay, I'm getting my water in today. But I forget to think about that as with my movement. And I think that is an important thing to think about too, because that, like I said, number one, could give us motivation. And number two, it just creates the habit of keeping the space for the movement, which I think is really important. Like, whether you're like really like killing it or not, at least that space is still created there. So when you are motivated, you're used to, the habit of having that space.
Right.
So I don't know if it's something that you've thought about before, like what's my minimum for movement? But what are your thoughts on that?
So I have like a couple of different thoughts on it, and I guess it depends on the day, honestly. So like my one minimum, because like I easily get 12,000 steps in a day. You know what I mean? Like sometimes at work, like 8 to 12,000. So like if I had a day where I have 12,000 steps and I'm freaking exhausted, I'm like, I'm good. But then that like spoils, like bubbles over into like it becoming too easy to just say that. And then it's like on the 8,000 step days, I'm still too tired, so I don't do anything. So like,
yeah,
I can go back and forth with that. I have before in the past been able to trick myself with a bike ride. They have this one like 15-minute like restorative. I can't even talk. Oh my God.
Restorative.
Like thank you. Restorative it. I see. I can't even say it. You know what I mean?
I do.
So like it's a super chill ride, and it like tricks me into doing something, but I'm not like crazy. Like my heart rate stays like pretty chill, but I still feel like I'm getting my movement in, like purposeful movement anyway.
I like that. And I could see how, like, especially when you're working, because I'm sure you're on your feet all day long, right? And I could see why you'd be exhausted. Although when you get to go home and you're like, I'm tired. Oh, I got steps. I'm fine. That's not, you don't have that space there for movement. And so I could see how even on the 8,000 step days, you're like, oh, I'm fine. I'm tired, because you haven't created a space after work, even if it's for, the 15-minute restorative bike ride. And that's a tough one too. What time do you usually go to work? Is it random?
So, no, I work. I work in a procedure area, so my schedule's set actually. Like I have it's 7:30 a.m. until like 4:30. But so we have like different assignments, and sometimes the one assignment we wear lead all day, so we wear like lead aprons and we're on our feet, so it's like carrying like a little weight pack around all day. So those days I'm a little more tired. Yeah, like we take it off in between cases, but some of the cases are like 2 hours long that I'm wearing this around, and like sometimes you have to like crawl down on the floor, and it's like an obstacle course some days.
Wow.
But like,
I'm just gonna wear my lead vest out.
But then like this week I'm in charge. Seriously, it's crazy.
What does in charge mean? What's the difference?
Tonight, like Monday is normally, so I'm sitting at the desk. So it's like a stressful, like you're coordinating the different rooms and the doctors and like the procedures. It's like, so where they're bouncing around. So there's a little running around, but it's mostly like desk and phone. I'd rather just be taking care of people. I hate talking on the phone. But today we didn't do CrossFit because our air conditioner broke, which is why I'm like sweating. So we did not sleep last night at all. I'm tired, hot, and stressed the fuck out. So we did not go to CrossFit tonight.
And sometimes
We're gonna
you
go
know, that's
tomorrow.
okay. Yeah, and that's okay. And so
Yeah.
thinking about like a day like today, what's your minimum? Is it hotter inside your house than it is outside? Sometimes that happens. I don't know.
Yeah, a little bit of both.
So
It's just like
maybe,
humid outside.
yeah. See, we don't get that kind of humid on the West Coast. It's a different kind of heat that's not as excruciating. That humidity like lays on your chest.
Yeah.
So, you know, maybe a day like today,
Yeah. So I
your
did do a
minimum's
dog
small.
walk, a quickie.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
And that could be a minimum if you have to walk your dog every day. You know, it's like, I mean, you have to walk your dog. I guess you don't have to walk them every day, but you know, that could be your minimum. Like I'm taking my dog around, you know, this mile block.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just something kind of, I think, is good to think about because it creates a little win in our day too, I feel like.
Right.
Versus like I could have taken 5 minutes and stretched, but I didn't.
Mm-hmm. I can
When
see
you
that.
do CrossFit, yeah, I mean, I like I said, Sam actually gave me this topic to talk about. I asked her, what were you going to talk about? And I'd never thought about it really before. I know how to trick myself into doing things because I feel like I should,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, I've never thought about it as just a minimum movement to create the space. So on those days, let me ask you this. On those days that you come home and you're tired, do you feel like you want to do something else? Or are you feeling satisfied with that? You know what I'm saying?
Both probably. Like I could sit there and say, oh, maybe I'll feel better mentally if I take the dog for a walk. Like sometimes it's like mental exhaustion as well as like physical. So I feel better if I do move even when I'm tired, but then I really don't physically feel like it. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. In a season of weight loss, let's talk about a season of weight loss and then and having a minimum movement goal. It's like if we continue to do the same thing and we're not seeing results, then we have to have some kind of minimum thing to change something. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so that's also something to think about. Like if you're feeling plateaued or stuck or whatever is okay, what minimum thing do I have to do to be successful in this season?
Okay. That makes sense. I got that.
Yeah. And like I said, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So it doesn't even have to be big. It could be just a spot saver. You know what I mean? So that when you do feel really good, you're doing something, you're doing maybe like a really intense ride or something like that. But at least you have that spot saved for yourself mentally and literally.
Right. Okay. I like that. I can do that. And I don't know why, like sometimes it's funny, like all the fit me shit, but like when you guys say it out loud, I'm like, oh yeah, duh, that makes sense. Why, like we turn it into like this big thing in our brain. I don't know why.
I don't know why as humans we have to like overthink seriously everything in the world. Like sometimes it's just like, just get up and go. Stop thinking.
Right. Yeah.
And that, that gets in our way. Also, that's a whole nother topic about every single thing in my life.
Yeah, really. Okay.
Hi, Cindy. She can hear us.
Hey there.
We're talking about on the days you're like really feeling unmotivated or don't want to do anything, or maybe even, you're busy or whatever. Like, what is your minimum amount of movement that you set for yourself? And maybe it's not even, maybe you haven't even thought about this topic, because I was telling Tabitha that I haven't really thought about like what's the minimum amount of movement. Like for example, 5 minutes on the bike and 10 minutes of stretch. And the importance of having that minimum just save a space in your life for that habit. So that when you do feel like it, that space is saved for you. And also, sometimes it can trick you into being more motivated and doing more. And so I don't know if that's something you ever thought about, but that's kind of what we're talking about.
Okay. I've definitely thought about it. And I have a Apple Watch, and I always try to close my rings, but I don't ever seem to close the exercise ring, because you have to you have to be very intentional about it. But I always try to do like the movement and the standing goals. If that's like bare minimum, I try to close those 2 rings.
And you have to be intentional, because I have an Apple Watch too, and I try to close my rings too. But even for the movement ring, you gotta have to be intentional. If I don't pay attention to it, I don't close it. You know what I mean? And so I would say that that is intentional. What kind of movement do you do, like, to close your rings?
Well, it just depends. Like if I'm working from home, I just get up and walk around. If I'm on campus, I'll close it within an hour or 2. So I have to be more mindful.
If you're walking, you should hit the walking app. Yeah. Well, if you're walking, you should just turn on the walking app. You know, the walking setting, you know, like on the Apple Watch, on the exercise goals, whatever. And then even if it's 5 minutes, so what? Start and stop it. And that will help you close your exercise ring and your move ring at the same time. And that'll help you feel like, oh, I actually did something very intentional.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, because I always feel like if I'm not going to do it for more than 30 minutes, then it's not worth me starting and stopping it.
Yeah, that's not true. That's not true. Like, I feel like it's always kind of worth it. And 5 minutes of exercise is better than no minutes of exercise. So I feel like, you know, hell yeah, mark that shit down. Like, and so what would you think, like, you know, could be something that sounds like would be a good minimum of movement for you? And you don't have to think of it as exercise. It doesn't have to be like I'm, you know, like going on a run or riding my bike or doing some, you know, step aerobics or something. You don't have to think about movement like that. Movement is whatever you like that you move your body, even if it's stretching or Pilates or something like that, you know?
Yeah, you know, I guess like a good attainable goal, I always try to think like worst case scenario would be maybe like 15 minutes of intentional movement. So even if it was like 3 times at 5 minutes, like I feel like even on the worst time, like if I was intentional about it and set that as the goal, that would be attainable.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And when you do that kind of movement, any kind of movement, but when you're doing it very intentional for like a smaller set time, make sure you're all in. Like, you're thinking about your muscles working, you're visualizing, like it's intentional from top to bottom. But even with that being said, even if you're not motivated, it's okay just to walk mindlessly. But if you're doing it intentional and you have the energy for it, like, think about your muscles. We can do anything for 5 minutes. And that's the kind of thing that kind of gets me through, is like, I can do anything for 5 minutes. 5 minutes is doable. So I like that. And set your watch, put your exercise thing on. Tabitha, do you have your walking on right now? You're walking around the house.
I don't. I should, right?
You should. Like, when I have coaching calls, you know, they're like 30 minutes a piece, and I have a hard time like going outside for them because my service sucks, blah, blah, blah. And I can't, there's too much distraction, but I'll like do figure eights around my table and stuff. And I logged in one day, like 1.5 miles on coaching calls, just walking around my table. I know it sounds
wow.
But it's like, wow, that was 1.5 miles of intentional movement. And hell
Right.
yeah, I'm marking that down. It took a long time. It took like 2 hours, but still. So Cindy, that's kind of what I want to challenge you when you're just doing some kind of, you know, intentional 5-minute walking, throw on that exercise thing and start looking at if you start closing your exercise ring.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll close it because you have to do like if I set my goal at 15, I still won't close the ring because the
Mhm.
ring is set to close at 30 minutes. But
Oh yeah.
I guess
Okay.
more
Even if you're
green is
halfway,
better
that's
than no green.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And who knows, that might push your brain to be like, you know what, I'm going to step this up 5 minutes every day. And then in a month, you're doing 30 minutes a day and it doesn't feel like that much more because you eased into it versus feeling like you have to like bump up in this time overnight.
Yeah.
Okay, ladies, I'm going to take a picture of us. I actually coach CrossFit at 4:30. So I'm going to take a picture of us. Can we see your face, Cindy? There you are. Okay, smile. Oh my God, I turned the phone off. Dear
I was like, you just
Lord.
told me to put my face on and then you took yours off.
I know. Instead of taking a screenshot, I like literally just turned the phone off. I'm not savvy. Okay, ladies, sorry to run, but I love the thought of having a minimum movement goal. You know, when all else fails, like, hey, I'm going to just walk for 5 minutes. I'm going to walk for 10 minutes. I'm going to stretch for 5 minutes. And just kind of creating that space in our mind and our day for movement. And then when we're really feeling it, we have that space there created for us already.
Okay.
So awesome.
Awesome. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Bye, ladies.
Bye.
You too.